In a few days, we will mark Tish'a B'Av, the saddest day on the Jewish calendar. A long list of catastrophes befell us Jews on that fateful day. 2,000 years ago, the Mishnah recalled that on Tish'a B'Av, the spies Moses sent to scout the Promised Land brought back a largely negative report which demoralized the Israelites. The first temple was destroyed by the Babylonians in 586 BCE. The second temple was destroyed by the Romans in 70 CE. The Bar Kokhba revolt against Rome failed when he was killed in the destruction of the city of Betar in 135 CE. And finally, Jerusalem was razed a year later and the exile began. Many more catastrophes also happened to us on Tish'a B'Av in the last 2,000 years. But let's focus on the last two listed by the Mishnah, the failure of the Bar Kokhba revolts, which triggered the diaspora. That revolt was repressed by the Romans with unparalleled ferocity. With genocidal fury, the Romans slaughtered 580,000 Jews, not counting those who died of hunger or disease or were wounded or forced into slavery. The Midrash on the Book of Lamentations, Echa Rabbah, describes in detail the savagery of the Romans. Quote, Rabbi Yochanan said, at Betar, the brains of 300 babies were found upon a single rock. Rabban Gamliel said, there were 500 schools in Betar, and the smallest of them had not less than 300 children. The Romans wrapped each and every child in his textbook scroll and burned him alive. Unquote. Add to that crucifixions, horrible torture, and gruesome executions. The Roman Emperor Hadrian was determined to wipe out Judaism. On Yom Kippur, we remember the 10 rabbis who were martyred in the period following the Bar Kokhba revolts. The Talmud says, quote, Rabbi Akiva, the greatest rabbi of the Talmud, was taken out for execution. While they skinned him alive, combing his flesh with iron combs, he recited the Shema. He prolonged the last words, Ehad, until he expired while saying it. Rabban Shimon ben Gamliel was beheaded. Rabbi Hanina ben Teradion was wrapped in a Torah scroll and burned alive. Damp wool was packed into his chest to ensure he would not die quickly. While he was being burned, he told his students that he could see the letters of the sacred Torah flying up to heaven. Unquote. Was it just the men who were murderers? No. The Talmud continues, quote, the Roman ruler's daughter coveted Rabbi Ishmael for his physical beauty. She asked that the skin of his head be flayed while he was still alive, so she could stuff the skin and look at his face. Unquote. Was it just the soldiers who were bloodthirsty? No. Roman citizens loved to go to the circus and watch wild beasts devour human beings. Gladiators slaughter one another. They came by the thousands and cheered lustily. Was it just in that period that barbarity flourished? No. Long before that, the Pharaoh of Egypt had ordered all male Jewish babies to be killed. In all cultures, children were burned alive or disemboweled on an altar as human sacrifices to appease angry so-called deities. Did later religions and isms help? No. People took their families out for a picnic to watch public executions, slow torture, or heretics burned at the stake by the Inquisition in the infamous auto da fe. Did civilization help? No. Witness the savagery perpetrated by the Germans, a highly civilized people, during the Holocaust. They murdered 1 million Jewish children in cold blood. These children were gassed, shot, beaten to death, injected with poison, subjected to so-called medical experiments, and so on. Are these unspeakable acts still perpetrated today? Yes. For example, on January 19, 2015, the Islamic State, ISIS, publicly executed 13 teenage boys for the crime of watching a soccer game. They left their bodies lying in the open, and their parents were not allowed to retrieve them. They burned a pilot alive on camera. They beheaded dozens of Christians on camera. We are led to ask, even shout, the question, How can anybody commit atrocities, especially against children? I know I can't. I'm sure you can't. How can anybody? In light of this, it is fair to ask, is humanity worth saving? The Talmud says that it would have been better if man had not been created. Quote, our rabbis taught, for 2.5 years, Bet Shammai and Bet Hillel were arguing. The first saying it would have been better if man had not been created, and the second saying it is better that man has been created. They finally took a vote and decided that it would have been better if man had not been created. But now that he has been created, let him investigate his past deeds, and if he finds them at fault, make amends, or as others say, let him examine his future actions before committing them. Unquote. In other words, now that we're here, let's make the best of a bad situation. The Midrash tells us that before creating the worlds, our worlds, God created many worlds and destroyed them because he did not like them. Quote, Rabbi Abahu said, the Holy One, blessed be he, went on creating worlds and destroying them until he created ours. And then he said, these please me, those did not please me. Rabbi Pinchas said, the proof is in Genesis, where it says, and God saw all that he has made, and behold, it was very good. All that he has made means all the worlds, the good ones and the bad ones. And behold, only this world was very good. Why did God destroy these worlds? The Zohar said that it was because they would not accept the Torah. God asked, and no one would. In our worlds, only Israel did. The Torah is necessary to sustain the worlds. The Mishnah says, quote, Al shlosha devarim ha'olam ha'omed, al ha'torah, ve'al ha'avodah, ve'al gemilut hasadim. The world rests on 3 things, on Torah, on worship, and on good deeds. Unquote. But later God had a change of heart and almost destroyed our world during the flood. Quote, and God saw that the wickedness of man was great upon the earth, and that every product of the thoughts of his heart was always only evil. And the Lord repented that he had made man on earth, and it grieved him at his heart. And the Lord said, I will destroy man whom I have created from the face of the earth, for I repent that I have made him. The earth had become corrupt before God and was filled with violence. And God saw the earth, and behold, it was corrupt, for all flesh had corrupted its way upon the earth. God said to Noah, the end of all flesh has come before me, for the earth is filled with violence through them. And behold, I will destroy them from the earth. Unquote. So God reboots the worlds with just Noah, his family, and his ark. Why? Because the Torah says that, quote, Noah was a just man and perfect in his generations, and Noah walked with God, unquote. So, righteous people can earn us a reprieve. The Talmud says that even today, only 36 righteous people keep God from destroying the worlds. Quote, Abaye said, to survive, the world must contain not less than 36 righteous people, tzadikei, in each generation, who are allowed to greet the divine presence every day. Unquote. These are called tzadikim nistarim, the hidden righteous ones, or lamed vav tzadikim, the 36 righteous ones, or lamed vav nix for short. Later, many times God wanted to wipe out Israel, and Moses convinced him not to. Now let us try to answer the original question. How can anybody commit atrocities, especially against children, especially while thinking they're serving a just cause? Here are 7 possible reasons. First, the most common one. The perpetrators say they're just following orders. Blame those who issued those orders, not me. Second, the perpetrators claim they're themselves victims of brainwashing and propaganda. Charismatic authority figures told them to do these things, and they trusted them completely. Third, the perpetrators say they strongly believed in a cause, and that the end justifies the means. A reign of terror is a valid way to force others to submit to your will. They don't like atrocities, but they're sometimes necessary to coerce people. Fourth, the perpetrators claim to be the victims of mob psychology. When everybody around you does it, you follow the crowd and do likewise. The numbers validate the action. Fifth, the perpetrators say they are afraid of retribution. If I don't obey, the authorities will harm me or my loved ones. Sixth, the perpetrators say they were promised a reward if they followed orders. A lot of money or services they really needed or wanted, and their needs come before everything else. Seventh, and most importantly, we must reluctantly recognize that all of us have the potential for being destructive, even ferocious and sadistic in certain circumstances. The Torah says, Yetzer lev ha'adam ra min orav. The inclination of a man's heart is evil from his birth. The Talmud calls this the evil inclination, or Yetzer hara. It cannot be eliminated and must be fought constantly. It must be channeled to good acts. For example, if one is born with a lust for blood, he should become a butcher, a surgeon, or even a soldier in wartime. It must at least be channeled to neutral acts. For example, those who enjoy violence should play in sports, or watch violent movies. Yet, this evil inclination is necessary for any accomplishment. The Midrash says, quote, "Can the evil inclination be very good? That would be extraordinary." Yes, because without the evil inclination, no man will build a house, take a wife, beget a family, and engage in work. So said King Solomon in Ecclesiastes, "And I saw that all labor and all achievement in work was the result of man's envy and rivalry with his neighbor." Unquote. This is a severe indictment of humankind. It suggests that we achieve things in life not for noble motives, but to gain the admiration of others, to show off, to have more money, more possessions, to impress the girl or the boy, to do better than our neighbors, to be ahead of the competition, to win prizes, to exercise power, to show those who said we would never amount to anything, or to leave worthy deeds behind so we're remembered after we die. None of these incentives are altruistic, but without them there would be no achievements, no progress. They are essential for the continued existence of the world. The driving force behind all our successes is bad impulses. So it's no surprise that the Talmud says, quote, Abaye said, "The greater the man, the greater his evil inclination." Unquote. Something to keep in mind when you meet great people. Ordinary people who appear to act normally in every respect can commit atrocities. When a sadistic murderer is caught, friends and neighbors frequently say, "But he was so nice, so polite, so considerate, so kind." As an example, consider the case of Nazi Reserve Police Battalion 101. It was a group of ordinary, middle-aged German family men. It was sent to Józefów in Poland in 1942. Their commander, Major Wilhelm Trapp, told his men to round up all 1,800 Jews in the village, separate the able-bodied men so they could be sent to a work camp, and slaughter all the women, children, and elderly. He added that those who did not want to do so could step aside. Of the 500 men, only 15 chose to opt out. The rest went on to slaughter the Jews as told. In fact, historians and prosecutors have not found a single case of anyone being threatened with death or imprisonment for refusing to commit atrocities. The Milgram experiment of the 1960s showed that people can act against their conscience and harm others even against their basic inclination. Here's how it was conducted. In 1963, Jewish Yale professor Stanley Milgram told his male subjects essentially the following. Here's your payment. We are studying the role of punishment in teaching. You will teach this man word pairs, then quiz him. If he answers wrong, shock him. The first shock is programmed to 15 volts, then 30, then 45, all the way up to 450 volts. The learner was an actor who stayed in another room, pretending to be shocked. He played a taped response that grew more and more desperate, begging the subject to stop. If the subject hesitated, the experimenter told him to continue with an authoritarian voice saying, "No permanent harm will come to the learner, and I alone am responsible, not you." The result was that all the subjects went up to 300 volts, and 65% went all the way to 450 volts, the maximum. Milgram then conducted several variations. The basic measure was the fraction of subjects who went all the way to the maximum, 450 volts. If the subjects were told to tell an assistant to administer the shocks, rather than doing it themselves, 93% went to the maximum. Thus, more people are willing to allow atrocities if they don't have to commit them themselves. If the subject was part of a team of 3, the other 2 being actors that never protested, 73% went to the maximum. Thus, slightly more people are willing to allow atrocities if they work with others who show no scruples. If the subjects were all women rather than all men, the result was the same. 65% went to the maximum. Thus, there was no difference between men and women in readiness to commit atrocities. If the site of the experiment was the rundown office of a private research firm rather than the prestigious Yale University, only 48% went to the maximum. Thus, the more trustworthy the surroundings appear to be, the more people are ready to commit atrocities. If the subject and the learner were in the same room rather than invisible to each other, only 40% went to the maximum. Thus, fewer people are willing to commit atrocities if they have to witness directly the result of their actions. If the subjects had to force the learner's hands on a plate to give them the shock, rather than just flipping a switch, only 30% went to the maximum. Thus, fewer people are willing to commit atrocities if their personal involvement is physical and substantial. If the experimenter left and gave orders by phone rather than in person, or left and let an assistant run the experiment, only 20% went to the maximum. Thus, fewer people are willing to commit atrocities in the absence of the people ordering them. If the subject was part of a team of 3, the other 2 being actors told to disobey, only 10% went to the maximum. Thus, fewer people are willing to commit atrocities if the people around them refuse to commit them. If the subjects were allowed to choose the shock level rather than the level automatically increasing each time, only 3% went to the maximum. Thus, fewer people are willing to commit atrocities if the level of harm they inflict is left up to them. If the experiment was run by 2 people rather than 1, and they argued, one telling the subject to stop and the other telling him to continue, none went to the maximum. Thus, fewer people are willing to commit atrocities if they receive conflicting orders from the authorities. We are forced to conclude that we are wired this way. There is the potential for savagery in each one of us. The columnist Charles Krauthammer, commenting on the recent incredible feat of the space probe New Horizons going all the way to Pluto, 3 billion miles away, and bringing back detailed images, said, quote, "For the wretched race of beings we surely are, we do, on occasion, manage to soar." May this be the last Tish'a B'Av we spend in mourning.